Sat Nam, Neo-Natives. This is MC Pan once again, Apocalyptic Rhymes Records. What's the question for today? Manic episode or Kundalini awakening? I want to share with you one of the most intense experiences that I've ever had in my life. And this took place in December 2011. It was during the time I was living in Providence, Rhode Island. And December 2011, Providence, Rhode Island. It all started, it was sparked by a book that my mother shared with me that I read called Broken Children, Grown-Up Pain. You see, when I was a kid, I experienced quite a bit of sexual abuse. Never from my family. I want to get that straight. It was from older kids, friends of mine, other people that I came in contact with that might have been significantly older than me at the time. But nonetheless, it happened. But, so since that type of thing occurred when I was so young, actually I was 7 years old, it set up this unconscious program within me where I felt like that was the only way that I was worth anything to anyone, was sexually. So it took me many, many years to heal from all of those experiences. And I went through so much dark suffering periods in my life that, I came to a point where I was just like, why? What's the point of making myself suffer over and over again for something that happened in the past? It's insanity. So I read this book that my mother gave to me called Broken Children, Grown-Up Pain, like I mentioned, and it just set off this chain reaction. It just got me thinking of, just how to reprogram my own subconscious mind, so that I wasn't operating from these unconscious, programs that had been ingrained into my brain in such an early age. So that book was the catalyst for this awakening experience that I had at the end of 2011. So right before that, during the time that I was reading this book, I was creating an album called Pornographic Childhood, which was about my own experiences as well as, themes from other things that similar people had gone through, incest issues, sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, all, throughout childhood, and what kind of effects that has on, a young mind and a young spirit soul, and how we can heal that and reprogram our minds in order to break out of those patterns that just keep going on and on and on. You know what I mean? Like, I realized that this is the time to break out of those cycles and become a new person. So that's what triggered it. And then I started reading all these other books. There was one called There Is Nothing Wrong with You, and other books of that nature on how to self-heal yourself and to reprogram the subconscious mind in order to get rid of these negative patterns in your life that stem from the abuse that you've experienced when you're a child. So it was just like this information was coming at me, so fast, and I was going through this rapid process of awakening and transformation and evolution. So I was staying up late nights reading these books, just thinking about all of these things, and just this rapid process of reconstructing my own way of thinking about myself and the world and the experiences that I had in my childhood. So it came to a head, the big experience that I want to share, which goes back to the question, manic episode or Kundalini awakening. Okay, so it was December 2011. Like I said, I was living in Providence, Rhode Island, and I was hanging out with my producer, the music producer that I was working with at the time. And sometimes we would go down to Colt State Park just to, unwind and go into nature, see the ocean, take a walk, just unwind, and all that stuff. So one night we decided to do that, December. And I remember it was a typical December night, cold. We drove down there in my Dodge Durango, and we were taking a walk, and I had this overwhelming sensation that I was in a world that I didn't belong in. Like I was trapped in this other dimension or realm, I guess you would say, and I was out of place, and I didn't know how to escape it and get to where I was supposed to be. Okay? And it freaked me out, like super freaked me out. So I called my mom up on my cell phone, and we were having this discussion. I was sharing with her all of these experiences and these realizations that I was coming to. And I just felt like she was like in some other realm or dimension or different, frequency level. And I wasn't there. I felt separated, like that's where I needed to be, but I wasn't. I was in this other place, and I didn't know where I was. Like I felt, I can't even really explain it, just like not where I was supposed to be. Like I was in this alternate timeline that was just wrong. Okay? Anyway, so she was discussing, and we were talking about Jesus and stuff, and I don't know why, but we were talking about, how, when he was crucified and stuff, and how disfigured he was right before he died, and she was saying that not even his mother could recognize him when he was on the cross before he died. And so she started praying for me, and I just freaked out and hung up the phone and put it in my pocket. My producer's still there. He's walking with me. He really doesn't know what's going on. I turned to him, and I don't know. I don't remember some of the things that I said because it's like blurry, but He told me later on that I had told him that he was holding me back, and I needed to accelerate my growth process, and he was keeping me in a space where I wasn't able to grow as much as I needed to. So keep in mind, it's December. It's freezing cold outside. I stripped off all my clothes, okay? I'm butt naked. He's freaking out, like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, he's like, you need to put your clothes back on. The cops are gonna come. What are you doing? You're freaking out. I don't know what's happening, right? So I was just like, this is me. This is the real me. Like, what do you have to say about it? Like, this is who I am, you know? I don't know why I said that. It just came to me. And then I just turned around and took off running. Through the fields, I was just like, bomb, 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 running, right? And the only thing in my mind was that I needed to get to the water. I needed to get to the water, okay? And so I was running through the field, and what it felt like was that there was two opposing forces within me fighting with each other, okay? Like the duality, the dichotomy of this Maya, this illusion that we're living in. You know, the good and the evil, whatever you want to call it. At that moment, I felt the duality of this level of consciousness ripping me in two different directions, okay? And so one part was driving me toward the water, like, you need to get to the water, to the water, to the water. And the other part of me was like, no, sit down, okay? It was weird, the weirdest thing. Like, I was like, you need to get to the water, but then I stopped and I would sit down. I was naked, remember, it's December, it's cold. And I started masturbating, like, in the field. Weirdest thing ever, right? So it was like, you need to get to the water, but then I'm like, no, sit down, whack off a little bit. And I'm like, no, I need to get to the water, to the water, to the water, okay? So I would stand up, and I would run a little bit more toward the water, and then I would sit down, you know, beat off a little bit, and then I'd get back up and start running toward the water. And I was just like, forgot everything, and the only thing that mattered in that moment was I needed to get to the water. So I remember I was running through the field, I ran through the woods, I was going through thorns, I didn't feel any pain at all. The thorns were ripping through my legs, I was bleeding. I was just running. All I needed to do was get to the water. Finally, I broke through. And on my way there, it was weird. I got to the parking lot where my car was at. And for some reason, I didn't have my clothes on, so I didn't have my keys or my cell phone or anything. So I, like, tried the handle, and it was locked. And I was like, in my mind, for some reason, I was like, this world has locked me out. Like, I was locked out. Like, I felt locked out. And then I just kept running toward the water. You know, it might have been symbolic. I needed a cleansing, a baptism, just something, you know? And it's like all this energy had just been building up, and then I freaked out, you know? So it was like I ran to the water. I was finally got to the rocks that went down into the water, and I stumbled down, and I dove into the water. Remember, like I said, it's December, it's freezing cold, okay? So I'm swimming under the water, my glasses fall off, get lost. The next thing I remember is breathing in the water, okay? I was like, taking huge gulps of the water into my lungs, and then nothing. I don't remember anything after that. Like, I have no idea how I got out of the water or anything. Like, I don't remember how I got out of the water. Next thing I remember, like, for all I know, I could have died and shifted into another dimension, and I could be in a totally different timeline right now. And in that timeline, I could be dead. Like, I don't know. So anyway, next thing I know, I'm walking on the road toward headlights, and I'm cold, like frozen. Who knows? I might got hypothermia or something. And I'm bleeding, and I'm walking toward headlights like this, like I'm asking for help, you know? I'm like, help me. And the car that was there stopped. This guy got out of the passenger seat, okay, where I was. I thought they were going to help me. Instead of helping me, he kicks me. He kicks me away. And then the next thing I remember is just feeling this intense anger. And the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by 4 police officers, okay? And I'm butt naked still. And so I fight with all 4 cops, butt naked, right? And they wrestle me to the ground, put me in handcuffs. They zip tie my arms together. And they ask me, they're screaming at me. They're like, what drugs are you on? And I remember I yelled back at them. I'm like, cocaine, PCP, meth, heroin, DMT, mushrooms, crank. Like, I listed off every single drug that I'd ever heard of. But the ironic thing is I wasn't on any of these drugs. I wasn't on any drugs at all. Like, that, that was the ironic thing about it. So I got handcuffed, zip tied to the ambulance bed. You know, they put me in the ambulance and took me to the mental hospital, obviously. Because, if anyone has kind of an acting out of that kind of awakening experience, obviously our culture is going to see that as a psychotic break, so they ended up diagnosing me bipolar, which I don't accept that label. I don't believe in those type of labels and mental illnesses or whatever. So now reflecting on what happened in that period, what I was learning in that right before that happened, and reprogramming my subconscious mind and all the healing that I went through, it was just all of that came to a head, way too quickly, and I wasn't able to handle that awakening, that Kundalini energy so quickly that it freaked me out. So it was an awakening freak out, I guess you would say. So the story continues at the mental hospital. I had some really interesting experiences while I was there. I'll share just one with you real quick, but the rest is for another video. After I came to, I was like in this fog for like a week or whatever, maybe a little less than a week before I was there, because they had me drugged up so much that I couldn't even remember. I didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't see anything. But I remember this one day I got out of bed and I walked out into the hallway, and there was this one room at the end of the hall, the only room that light was coming out of, like light was flooding out of the room. And I walked into the room, and there was like a bag of clothes, down at the floor, and I was like going through the clothes and stuff, because I was like, are these my clothes? I couldn't figure it out. They were women's clothes, and like something in my mind was like, I felt like thought that I had transformed into a woman, that my outsides finally matched my insides. But anyway, so I put the clothes back and I stood up, and there was a bedside table, and I was looking on the table, and there's a book there, and I picked up the book, and the title was Jesus Calling. And the moment that I picked the book up, I swear to God, I heard trumpets in the distance. I heard trumpets. I pick up the book, and I heard trumpets. Okay? And then I put the book down. So, Manic episode or Kundalini awakening? Sat Nam. Love to all beings.